TIFU by cracking a joke about Space Force. Last night as I was coming home from picking up dinner, I hopped on the elevator in my apartment at the same time as a guy wearing a Space Force t-shirt. Being in the DC area, I'm used to all sorts of military people wearing casual armed forces shirts in the gym, but I had never seen a Space Force shirt, ever. So, I turn to the guy and make a joke because I'm 100 that annoying person that likes to break awkward silences on elevators. I say to him, sometimes I forget that the Space Force is a real military branch. He looks at me, very seriously, and says it's most definitely real. I used to be in charge of it. That's right, my dumbass unknowingly made a joke about Space Force to the former commanding officer of the United States Space Force, who apparently lives in my building. I recovered by saying that I work at Veterans Affairs, true, and that one of our long-term efforts is getting all of the VA systems updated to include USSF, also true, which got me a smile from him, but the damage was already done. I did a little Googling when I got to my apartment, and not only was this guy the former commanding officer, but he's known informally as the father of Space Force and is a retired general. X200B TLDR made a joke about Space Force to a former general known as the father of Space Force and almost died of embarrassment. It's a small comment and he doesn't seem to be offended. Not a big fuck up, just embarrassing. I once met a gentleman who told me he worked at a local community college, which I referred to as high school with ashtrays. He found it very funny, which was a very generous response coming from the executive director of the school. I think if you go ahead and refer to the father of the Space Force as Space Daddy, you'll get back into his good graces. Nice that you met Steve Carell. Invite him over, get him drunk, ask about aliens, report back. May. The Air Force is so damn happy that the Space Force is around so that the other branches start picking on them. One of the biggest missed recruitment opportunities, not including Space Cadet as an actual rank in the Space Force. Personally, I would have signed up in a heartbeat. Up to die peacefully in their sleep to an orbital rail gun. Should have called it US Space Corps. Space Force sounds like some 50s cornball shit or something a 7-year-old came up with. Yes, I'm quite sure General Raymond is quite used to remarks and jokes like that and took it well. He does have a sense of humor, even if he bears a passing resemblance to Lex Luthor. I don't think it was a FU. As a follow-up, you should have said you thought Elon was in charge of it. TF does the Space Force do? Like NASA but more involved with territories in space? On your tombstone made fun of the father of space. Look up rods from God, if you want to be blown away by a proposed weapons system from like 10 years ago. Wait, you ran into Steve Carell and didn't recognize him? Trump was and is a dillweed, but credit where credit is due. The Space Force is actually pretty cool. All the government space agencies used to be part of the Air Force, and all he really did was break them off into their own branch and give them more funding. Classic business organizational restructuring, not much more than that. Plus, be honest. If Obama had come up with the Space Force, he would have been lauded as this JFK-esque visionary with hopes and dreams and ambitions for the future of American space travel. Congrats on meeting General Raymond. Not too much of a fuck-up. General Raymond is a great dude with a sense of humor. Making fun of Space Force is never a FU. What is he offended about? He hasn't fought any space wars. It like being offended if people didn't think Subway was real and you worked there. Raymond just retired 3 months ago. Hope he is happy. Space Force has a legitimate purpose, but it was literally just a rebranding of the Air Force's space-related duties. So it's less dumb than you think because they have a real function, but it's more dumb than you think because it's literally just rebranding. I live near Space Force. Whenever I go down the road past its gate I laugh because I forget it's a real thing since the most I've heard of it was the show. Well, next time you want to make a dumb crack about a t-shirt, you can say, last time I tried roasting someone about their military t-shirt, I found out they were the former commander of the whole branch, grimacing face. The real TIFU is the people who named it Space Force give it a joke of a name, and what do you expect but people treating it like a joke? At least you didn't say Spaceballs. The concept of a Space Force is still an abstract thought to many people. I'm sure he is used to it. Was it Steve Carell? He made his bed, he need to lie in it. If he wanted respect, he should have stayed in the Air Force or retired. He's lucky you didn't take his lunch money and give him an atomic wedgie. You met Steve Carell? Former military here, USAF. We're used to everyone making fun of each other. No harm done, I'd say. But did you really FU though? Come on. It's Space Force we're talking about. It should be Rocket Father making this post. TIFU by admitting I was in Space Force. Whatever, man, F that dude. You can't own space puffs on a space spliff. I mean, it's not really a foo. Space Force is still having issues with their dress uniforms, for fuck's sake. I got to talking to a guy at a conveyor belt sushi bar. We had both been in the army. I told him about being a jump master on a jump where the commander of the 82nd Airborne Division was in the stick, and that, being the jump master, I gave a major general I was a staff sergeant a lawful actually stand up, hook up in the door and go. I asked him if he'd ever given a lawful order to a major general. He said yes. Turns out the guy was a lieutenant general. Steve Carell? I forgot that was a real thing until I saw one of their uniforms in the Smithsonian Museum. May CPRS and Vista have mercy on your soul. Don't worry. It's still not as bad as not realizing a girl was flirting with you, only to get home and realize it while you had some water. My apologies, sir. You gotta be quick on your feet, own it. I didn't realize generals could be punished like that. From everything I've heard, Gen Raymond is a pretty cool guy. He probably didn't take it too personally. Next time you see him, say, "Hey, you're that Merchant Marines guy, right?" Followed immediately with a big grin. In a way it acknowledges your original mishap, hopefully breaks the ice, and at the very least offers a way to bridge any unfortunate awkwardness from your last interaction. That's awesome. Wish I got to meet General Ed. Maybe he should get the ramrod out of his ass. He should have just chuckled and said, "I hope it is, I used to run it." There's no reason for him to take offense. Well, could have been worse. You could have said, "I loved that show." Who apparently lives in my building. Who was visiting your wife to see about some space she needs explored. I think you're bound by law to refer to him as Buzz Lightyear from now on. Space Force is a joke until your GPS doesn't work and you're lost in your own hometown, woman facepalming. You need to watch Space Force now with Steve Carell. Not doubting your story, however, the person known as the father of the Space Force is someone by the name of Bernard Adolph Schriever, who died in 2005, so I do find this hard to believe. You met Steve Carell? Did the guy you meet also work as a weatherman? Sounds like a fun person to be around. People who take themselves too seriously are rarely worth worrying about. Just leave a six-pack at his door and he'll forgive you. Space Patrol. Ask him how they keep the door-mounted guns on the space shuttle from burning up on re-entry. That dude knows about the aliens. I wouldn't call that damage, but a realistic take on the subject. You wouldn't have been the first to say so. This could be a valuable connection. Your only mistake was not leaning in and saying who said that and then pretending he didn't exist. Then ask him what department of the Air Force he worked for. Damn lucky he did not use his transporter and beam to UCT Alpha 5. He was fucking with you. DC resident. At this point in time I feel that the Space Force is a bit of a joke, unnecessary, but with all the space exploration going on and planned in the near future, it's inevitable that such a branch would be needed. Pick a service, pick a challenge, set yourself apart. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. What a great place to start. He's not in the jingle, you are fine. LOL. In an old job, my direct boss commented on how dumb someone in the army must be to be assigned as a driver for someone. Our boss, retired from the army, had been an enlisted driver before becoming an officer. I don't think anything you said was bad. Sounds like he just has zero sense of humor. Space Force has to do a S-shape both hands and yell out Space Force. Bonus if they bubble sweets, those things are expensive. G-Ray is personable. I'm sure it's not the first time someone has seriously asked that question of him. Next time you run into him, ask him for a PR job. SF clearly hasn't spent enough of their budget on it yet. The only fuck up was not asking him whether he and the other officers assumed it was a joke at first. He should be more embarrassed than you, TBH. But you didn't say anything wrong. I feel bad for him if he took you that serious. I was once at a dog park in Los Angeles talking about movies with some random dude. I was on a tear about all the direct-to-video animated movies Disney was making at the time and said I was glad they fired the dude who pushed something that I thought devalued the brand. Yay, it was the dude. Sorry, fuck that. Space Force is the stupidest name they could have come up with. No, I think you're fine. Fuck them if they can't take a joke. You saw Steve Carell? It's still okay to laugh at Space Force, lol. People who served in the military are human, and often total pieces of shit. Space Force should be rolled right back into the Air Force. What a huge effing waste of money, yet another, to burnish any policy as originating during the moron administration of Trump. Not a TIFU. The TIFU is the guy who created the Space Force. He convinced an idiot to make a new branch whose time won't come until space travel has reached expanse levels. So, that actually kinda makes it his fault they approved that stupid name nobody else takes seriously either. Army guy here. When he said he used to be in charge of it, the proper response would have been to yell nerd Dobbard, tweak his nipples. You live in the same building as a general of a military branch? How rich are you? I also forget that was a real thing and sounds stupid as shot. Maybe that guy just needs to take it in stride. You were right, Space Force is a joke. Don't feel bad. You aren't the only one. I attended the Cherry Blossom Festival parade this year, and when they announced the branches of the military they straight up didn't mention the Space Force despite the fact that their flag was on display and there were members marching in uniform. The Space Force is a joke because Don Trump claimed to have started it. It can't be real. I would have followed up and asked what exactly do they do day to day, other than collect a check. I mean, he was the head of Space Force and he lives in an apartment building. It's still a dogshit name and should have just remained part of the Air Force. At least he didn't demand you thank him for his service. Space Force is the best thing to ever happen to the Coast Guard. He was silly enough to go along with the stupid name and stolen logo, so that's on him, not you. I'd laugh, too. In your defense, something involving space shouldn't be such a low-hanging fruit when it comes to jokes, but here we are. Space Force is a joke. I used to be in charge of Space Force. You know what I am talking about then. Honestly, who gives a shit if he was in charge or a general? He should lighten up and recognize a joke. I still can't believe Space Force is a real thing. It sounds like some shit a 3-year-old would make up. It's good to be black on the moon. TBF, most of us see it as a huge joke. I mean, it's only existed for 3 years. It's easy to forget. Not a fuck up. Those people should be mocked and disrespected, lol. Should have asked him if they use Windows or Linux servers for mission-critical systems. And if Windows, then how often they get restarting for updates. Progress remaining. 11 hours. To be fair, A lot of people consider the Space Force to be kind of a joke. Seriously, though, he probably has to have at least something of a sense of humor about it. I doubt he's really that offended. I might be his baby, but that doesn't make Space Force any less a joke.